Welcome to the Fitness Oracle, where we have real conversations with real people just like you, with real stories just like yours. And this is one of their stories. I am your host, John Katsavos. My guest today is Blossom Bamboo from Dark Blossom. She is an American born, living in Amsterdam for the past 25 years with two daughters, working on her own spiritual and personal growth for the past 15 years. She is a link separator in the chain of female dysfunction and wounding in her generational line, a recovered Christian, self medicator, and self destructor. She's a survivor of domestic violence and emotional neglect. She was a model, cruise line staff agent, service provider in this restaurant industry, theater, and sex industry. She placed first place in for a figure class bodybuilding competition in 2007. She is also a yoga teacher, lifestyle coach, and personal trainer. She does tantrika and now a Tantra Therapist.
Yes, Tantric.
Blossom, welcome to the
Hello.
show.
Hello. So when I hear that back, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. A tantrika, it's not something I do, it's something I am. So
Okay, I'm sorry.
that is, that is a female practitioner of Tantra. So,
Okay.
yes, it's great to be on the show. Thank you for having me, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being on. So, how's the Past the Pause podcast coming along?
Past the Pause podcast is, it's coming along really well. I've just uploaded the episode and it is evolving faster than I can keep up with it. Like I have the amount of information that I keep getting, and I want to already expand as far as the topic. Initially it's about menopause because that's the stage of my life that I'm in, or we could say midlife because men go through this as well. And it's so much more than that. It's really about past any pause, such as the giant pause that the whole world finds themselves in today. And I had a conversation with my last guest, and we even touched on that. And I've actually heard other people touch on this as well. Even Joe Dispenza kind of called it a pause. I was like, hey, I think I need to have him on the show. But really, yeah, I find myself having the drive and the desire to actually go deeper into what past the pause really means. And I'm finding myself a little bit feeling um, restricted, having to niche, although I also understand the importance of that. So
Yeah, I also had that as well, trying to find like that one person that I need to talk to. It's a hard thing when you want to help so many different people.
yeah, or like me, the mind goes in very broad, yeah, broad directions.
Yeah. So what in your intro, when I was introducing you, I said that you're a recovered Christian. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's what I said the first time I heard that. I can tell you the story of when I heard that, but like it clicked. So I've never been to California. I grew up in the United States and I never went to California. Of course, it was a childhood dream. And if I hadn't come to Europe, I most certainly would have ended up on the West Coast. So I was there last year and I was in the kitchen, and it was a Tantra gathering and an event. And one of the girls or one of the younger women was saying something about being a recovered Christian. I was like, what do you mean? And then when she described it, I was like, yeah, I get it. I'm that too. Meaning that raised in really did more damage than good. because of the hypocrisy and the discrepancy and the, um, you know, for me, and also in this conversation, finding out that I'm not the only one that has this, being told one thing and being shown another, or getting two or three different messages that are discrediting each other. And for me growing up, that was very confusing. And I even had several years where I just dissed God as a word. Like, I'm not going to use that word anymore because it didn't resonate. It had such a bad vibe, basically. God's going to strike you down, and God, I mean, like, God was nothing more than something to be afraid of. Um, so I've gone through a whole evolution of what to name uh, this energy that makes it, my lungs are breathing, my heart is pumping, the flowers are blooming. I mean, what is that? And in my own journey, I've come to hear source, the unified field, uh, infinite intelligence. I really love that. uh, I was always told that God was love. So I also got a skewed definition of what real love is. I mean, so love was conditional, of course, because God is very judging. Um, so this is what I mean by recovered Christian, because now I can say God, and it means to me universal intelligence. It means this energy of pure potentiality, um, ecstasy, bliss, joy, happiness. It's unconditional. It's who we are in our very core. And so, does that answer the question?
Yeah, yeah, it's your answer. So yes, it answers the question. There's no right or wrong. I don't want to say like right or wrong. Like I myself am Christian 2.0, I guess you can say. um, I've had my own bump-ins with that side, and it's hard for me to argue. Let's just leave it at
Okay.
it's very hard for me to argue that there is something else going on that we fail to see that's out there for our better good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
I
think,
don't deny, I mean, don't at all. I'm not an atheist, or, well, it depends on what your definition of atheist is. I had this discussion with my daughter, and she's like, well, atheist is just anyone that doesn't, follow any religion. And just because you don't follow a religion, or you don't a religion, doesn't mean you can't be religious. Because actually, maybe we'll get into that a little bit further into the show. But anything that you practice on a daily basis, then you start doing it religiously. And is that a religion? Or, yeah.
for me, an atheist would be the definition of a nihilist, the
Hmm.
absence of belief of something else other than yourself. And that for me is what an atheist is. Now, if you believe, like, this is why, like, anybody who believes in anything greater than themselves for the betterment of themselves, to me, they believe in something, which is humbling.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. So this is the importance right now, this discussion, this is the importance of always checking in with people that you're communicating with, and to, and for, and together. What is your definition? How do you define it? Um, I mean, if we were to go and look it up, what is the dictionary's meaning of atheist? And does it matter where in the world you are when you use that? As a European, maybe atheist is a little bit more broader used. And I don't like personally, I don't like the word spiritual. Oh, you're so spiritual. Well, I don't think I am. I think everyone is, because that's the whole concept behind holism, holistic. Is that we're a body, physical, we are a mind, which is non physical, depends. It's not the brain, but the mind, and spirit. So you've got your body, your mind, and your soul or spirit. And yeah, that's how I believe. So I don't know if that's any religion or if it's atheist or if it's spiritual. It's just who I am.
It is what it is. Um,
I definitely know that I am infinite, and that this physical is not all of who I am.
that's awesome.
Mm,
Um, Again, in my intro about you, you went down some really dark paths in your past of
mm.
self-destruction. Can you talk about what led you down that road?
Yeah, of course. I know it's also one of the main main issues that you uh, shine light onto and want to help people with, and that is self-esteem, or I like to now call this your self-worth. Um, I was just not worthy. Like, I never got the message ever that I was wanted. I heard that I was loved, but like I said, it was really empty words, because the behavior, um, I learned later, many years later, after many different toxic relationships, where I had to learn the lesson again and again and again, because I equated certain behaviors with love. And so now I was in love. So if these people, they better prove to me that they love me like my parents did, and be really horrible to me. Not that my parents were horrible to me because they wanted to or it was intentional. They probably most likely just didn't have any of the tools to do any differently. I believe that, of course. Um, so yeah, I was. There's always gradations when you're looking at this stuff, but I mean, at the end of the day, children between 0 and 7, it's now science. They've proven that the subconscious mind and the mind in general of a child under the age of 7 is at a different wavelength, a different frequency, and everything that's coming in is just the truth. They have no way to discern. Um, so if you're getting hit, or you're getting, told to be shut up, you're causing too much trouble, whatever you are, you're too good, you're too bad, you're too fat, you're too thin. All of that comes in those earliest messages. And I got pretty early on the message that it was only about the outside, and anything that came from within that wanted to got shut down. And you asked me about Past the Pause. This is really the kernel of Past the Pause, because of that early being shut down early in life. Does
That's
that
in,
answer the
that's
question?
that's interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, I have two young nephews, and you could see in them how quickly they pick up on things, and you have to be very careful.
Mm.
I don't know how things are over in Amsterdam, but I know here in Toronto things are very, school system especially, I'm not happy with, because they're teaching children stuff that they should be learning later on so they can make a proper judgment. Just like you said, whatever you tell them is going to be the truth.
Yeah.
We're going to touch up on a little bit of that later on, uh, about where I was going with that line of questioning. But
Mm.
you also, I also mentioned that you're a link in the, you're a link separator in the chain of female dysfunction. And what
Yeah.
can men learn from that?
Ooh. Oh, this is a really deep question. What can, well, first, let me explain what I mean by that. The way I see it as a link separator. And I had no idea that this was going to be on my path when I had children. And in the first instance, I thought, no way, I'm not bringing children into this world. And this is before COVID and before masks were banning 25 years ago. I was like, I'm not bringing children into this world. Um, and that changed. And it was actually the beginning of my, I believe, spiritual path, as people call that now. I was reading a book and then that it was my destiny to become a mother, and I didn't know why. And then when I had children and I saw me repeating patterns, I knew why, but that didn't mean that I could immediately stop repeating patterns. Also, like, why did I have daughters and not sons? So it was like, always been very clear to me, and I don't have it on paper, I don't have it written down, it's nothing I studied, it's just like an inner knowing that I know that I have daughters so that I could do this work. I look at my mother, her mother, the great grandmother, and it just goes back generations and generations, that something different needed to happen. And I'm doing the work. That's not to say that my children had the best childhood, but it was definitely by far a totally different environment than what I grew up in many aspects.
Hmm. Um, so how can men what can men learn from that?
Well, I cannot say that they can learn from the, yeah, well,
Obviously, men can't have children, but I mean, they can have families.
well, they definitely can have children. There is something that's called the mother wound. And this is not just something between mothers and daughters, it's also between mothers and sons. But for the first recognition is that there is this generational wounding that is passed down. It has to do, in my humble opinion, and from all of the books and knowledge that I do have, it has a lot to do with the patriarchy and the cultures in which we all have evolved from. And this goes back, at least 5,000 years, if not more. Now, what can men learn from this? What I'm sharing is to be aware and to realize that I would, without having proper black on white information, I would still dare to say that at least 90% of women are coming from some sort of dysfunctionality in the, what you could call the mother wound, or from the mother line, from the female line. And even if it's not directly, and that's just because if you look at the societies that we all have been evolved from. So I think that the basis of me telling this story is creating awareness, letting men know, people know that this is the case. And it's not to say that there's something wrong with it, but just let's be aware so that we can change it. Yeah.
Cool. Very good message. So switching gears a little bit, kind of not really, but not bring it up a notch. For guys out there that don't feel capable, how could you help them?
Capable between
Yeah.
Parentheses, what do you mean by capable?
Well, there's a lot of,
Capable. Are we going to start talking about sex? Because I love to talk about
yes.
sex.
Yes, we are. We are going to be
Okay,
talking
great.
about
Let's just
sex
be
right now.
clear. Okay,
Because
okay.
there's
Let's be
a,
clear. We're going to talk about sex.
yeah. So first and foremost, the physical capability of not being able to perform.
So, the first thing I want to say about that is that sex and sexuality is not a performance. We are not actors here. We are not on a stage. Um, and the best sex is when there is no one of the people involved performing in any way. And that is, one of the clearest messages that I've gotten since I've been on this path. And it's very confronting after having a lifetime of sexual activity and realizing that I bought it. Mm. And to realize that very often I was also performing. And can you hear me?
You're cutting in and out actually a little bit.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah, this is as good as it gets, I think.
Okay.
Do I need to repeat something?
Uh, yeah. What you were trying to talk about was kind of cutting in and out, so we didn't really get a good connection or clear answer what you were trying to say.
So, the first thing that I want to say about that is get rid of the whole idea that we're performing. That I think was clear. And then, since I've been on this path, one of the biggest confrontations to realize that, what I said was I was my own best porn actress. I mean, I also grew up with the notion that it's about performance, that it's about the way you look or the way you sound. And it's really funny that in Tantra we do use sound and movement and aesthetics to some extent because you need to set the space. It's really important to set the container where the love making is going to take place. But to answer your question very directly, stop, like cut it out. Sex is not a performance.
That's
So,
great. That's great.
boom, no more anxiety. Um, However, it is that there's large portions of the population of sexually active men and women that have this block.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest factors with this, especially with guys, is their own self-esteem. They don't
Mm-hmm.
feel worthy that they're going to go up to anybody and just start, or anybody and just start talking to them with the incentive of having sex after that. I remember countless times my friends saying they would pick up the hottest girl in the club and they would force me to go and talk to her. And that kind of pressure, I couldn't even say hello to her. Whether she liked me or not, I had no idea. But that peer pressure on top of it, I was like, well, this doesn't feel normal for me. So,
And
sorry.
so what was it about that was debilitating? Was it the peer pressure or was it the actual going and saying hello to somebody?
I think it was both because a lot of guys have that problem. They can't walk up to just anybody and say hi because the fear of rejection, one, and two, the added on peer pressure didn't help either.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
then your friends are starting to look at you. They're like, "Oh, what kind of guy are you? You can't even talk to just that girl over there." so you're being judged as well. So how could you
Well,
help?
if it's if it's so easy, then why aren't they talking to the girl? you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When you're in that moment, it's hard to say that, why don't you go just do it? Leave me alone, just go do
Mm,
it. But it's hard
mm,
because the spotlight's on you now,
yeah.
so it's hard, especially from a guy like me who's an introvert. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that are introverts. To do that, I know the friends have good intentions, but it's just for an introvert, you can't just do that.
Mm, no, that's true.
How would you help somebody in that kind of situation?
So, the first thing that's so important in this is when we're talking about worthiness, self worth, self esteem, is getting connected with yourself. So, it's um, in our relationships in the outside world, it's always a reflection of the relationship with ourselves. Um, you can't go and talk to somebody. How is your relationship with you? Can you talk to you? What is your relationship with yourself when you look in the mirror? Can you have this kind, gentle, open conversation with yourself? Like, hey, hi, good morning, wow, welcome to another day. Aren't we happy to be here together? Um, yeah, it could sound corny, but the more and more work that I do, and the more and more that I work with clients, I see it again and again that it is not cliche. Self love is really where it begins. There's not one, um, how do you say it, like a wave meal answer to self love. If it takes 7 years for the brain to get into the I always forget the names of the different waves. I've really got to memorize these. But in our conscious, do you know them? Maybe you know them. You can help me out here.
I
You've
think
got beta,
there's,
theta, delta, gamma.
yeah, and
But
alpha waves.
right. Well, so anyway, children before the age of 7 or 8, they're not fully in the conscious wavelength of like you and I are. And then there's another 7 year age until 14. And then actually, 7 is a big number when it comes to development. And in my line of work and things that I have learned is that there's different lines of development. So if you've got a board here and you've got all kinds of different, you've got academic development, you've got your language skills development, you've got your social skills development, your religious development, your physical. You might be really good, somebody might just blink out in their physical development, but emotionally they're still at like, I felt like I was emotionally 10 when I was 20. And it took me quite some time to start realizing, not even to realize, but then to really confront it. And this is a lot of what I do. I am called Dark Blossom. I really like shadow work and to go into these places in our psyche and really look at those in the mirror. So the day that you wake up and you're like, fuck, I hate myself. That is a hard day. That's a day you're gonna scream, you're gonna cry, you're gonna really feel like shit. But it's the first step in being able to, going back to your example, even going and talking to someone else. Because when you can confront, oh my God, I hate myself, that really hurts. If I have this inside of me towards me, then it's quite logical. It makes a lot of sense why I can't even talk to another person. Um, and I'm not talking, I say this from experience. Like, um, I could only be over the self-destruction and stuff. I could only be an extrovert, which most people thought that I was, when I had a lot of stuff inside of me, like, drinking or drugs of all different sorts. I actually loved this extrovertial side of myself, but it wasn't who It wasn't a side of me that I had tapped into consciously with, real true love, and been able to like get out there on the dance floor sober and dance, or get out there in front of people and sober speak my truth, use my voice. Um, and what I noticed in this process, going back to what you said, your example, is that I had or have had the same thing. It is not that freaking easy to talk to a stranger, or is it? And it's something very deep inside. And I always say that the best way to get to, what you're talking about, the self-esteem, is through going in, going in, and it's an inside job.
So basically what we're talking about is if you want to improve your own sex life, you have to look inside yourself and love yourself first.
Absolutely, absolutely. And oh, love yourself first sounds really easy, and with the mind we can get it, and with the words we can get it, but when you go in your heart, I mean, that's where tantra comes in, and that's when your own hands come in. And we also have some practices, what I would call mirror work, that you literally look in a mirror. You use your mirror for your face or other different body parts, going up and down, and really embracing yourself. Can you say to your face, can you say to your body part, can you say, I love you, I embrace you, this is me? Like, this body and our genitals and our ears and our nose, our face, our mouths, it's going to be with us until we're done. And so your lover might be around for a little while, or maybe a little bit longer if you get into a long-term relationship, but it's not going to be with you forever. But your own body and your own body parts are, unless of course you lose something. My uncle just lost a foot, but yeah, he's really good with it. He's pretty cool with it. Like, but going back to like, there's a good chance that none of us are going to lose our genitals. So what I would really suggest is, it's inside. It's inside, meaning like, can you go in and then go into the space of your body where your sex is, your sexual energy, your genitals, and where your stomach is, and feel where your heart, and feel like, most of the times people will start to say, yeah, oh, I feel constriction there, or I feel pressure there, or I feel it's heavy. Or so whenever there's any parts of our body or our psyche that's heavy and bogged down, that's what then I do as a tantra therapist, and that's what tantra teaches us to do, is to open up these channels and these blockages, because only from an open and loving, posture towards yourself can we be that way out in the world.
We're going to get into Tantra in a little bit, but first I want to touch up on sexuality. So, what's the difference between sex and sexuality? Because I think there's
Mm.
a big disconnect here with 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 the world. I think the entire world has a huge disconnect between sex and sexuality.
I agree with you 100, and like almost 200, like 1,000%. I agree with you. um I could, I feel like the whole, it's three letters, and it is so misunderstood. Um, there's someone who is sort of my hero or heroine. Her name is Layla Martin, and she's a big YouTuber and Tantra teacher. And I love the way she talks about sex and sexuality. But sexuality is not necessarily sex. And you can say sex, and like when I say go to your sex, that I'm talking about your genitalia, that I'm talking about that area of our body which is not the only place in the body where we can feel sexual, not at all. We can use our whole bodies for that. And then sexuality is, I'm sure there's textbook definitions, but for me, energy, sex in most everybody's mouth, they think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can hear me? Okay. And I have two teenage daughters. So, they say sex, they mean the literal, like getting down, dirty, having intercourse, and all those other, playful things that come along with that. And what I miss is that people have the understanding that sex is it's just so multifaceted. It's not just one act. It is as different as there are people on this earth. That is how many different ways there are to have sex. And what I have observed in watching my daughter's generation around me, I'm actually dumbfounded that they actually are experiencing a lot the way I did 30 years ago. And I'm like, did I do something that I shouldn't have, or should I have done something that I didn't? But it's not just the upbringing of mom. It's like society as well. It's what they see on internet. It's what they get from their peers. So I'm really happy and overjoyed and pleased to open up the conversation about sex. Like, what do we mean? People are, I don't know, have you ever heard of DTF? DTF?
No, I
Ever heard
have
of
not.
that? As it goes around, and like, yeah, are you DTF? Because I'm DTF. And that means that you're down to fuck.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and I think, yeah, DTF. Yeah, I didn't know either, but it's, but if you're on Tinder, you'd only have to be on there for one day, and you'll know what DTF is. and that is, for me, I find that such a sad thing. When there's no consciousness around it. If you're a very conscious being and you're very in tune to yourself and you've got that self-worth going for you and you've got that self-esteem and you know that is exactly what you want to do and you want to meet a like-minded person to do that, you know, live and let live. Although I just think that sex just gets thrown around as a commodity, and which it is been also for thousands of years. It's something that people have used as an exchange for, I'll do this for you if you do that for me, kind of thing. um, I think I've gotten off. What is sex? And what was the question?
What's the difference between sex and sexuality?
Yeah, so sexuality is energy. I could be, there may other people that think differently, but I feel that sexuality is really an energy. And that is an energy that we all have within us. We all have that inside of us. Whether we're asexual or not, we may not have any drive to have sex, to do the act. That means that you don't have the sexual energy, that you have your own sexuality. And that can come out, like, if your sexual energy is free flowing and you're in touch with your own sexuality, that can come out in very beautiful, wonderful, creative endeavors. For
Mm-hmm.
instance,
Is there a way a guy can actually increase his own sexuality? Because I know this baby is, and I actually have a follow-up question, but let's answer that. Let me just ask that
well,
one first.
it's just to keep it simple, yes, the answer would be yes.
Is this directly tied with the amount of testosterone that the man is producing?
hmm I'm not an expert, so I can't say a scientific yes or no. I do believe that, of course, knowing what most people know about testosterone being the male hormone, and the more of it there is, the more their libido is going to be high. But a high libido also doesn't say that much about the quality of sex or your sexuality. Um,
Okay.
yeah. Like
Because this,
taking a little blue pill is not really is not going to be solving any of your core deep issues around sexuality.
mhm.
And I think that's also very sad that people are in this thing just so they can have a tool to work with. Yeah.
Yep, for both of them. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope your listeners like kind of can read between the lines. I don't know.
I'm sure they do
Yeah.
listen between they hear between the lines. They can read between the lines. Just toning it back a bit, kids here in Ontario and in Canada, they're actually learning about sex and sexuality at a very early age. I
Yeah.
mean, at grade one, at kindergarten, junior kindergarten, I think they start to teach them about it. This is a very polarized discussion here in Canada. What are your thoughts on teaching 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds about sex and sexuality?
I need to know the content, like what exactly are they teaching them in first grade at elementary school?
They're teaching them that it's okay to experiment with anybody, male or female.
Okay. But who's there? Like, is this
The
literally
teachers, the
in
teachers in
public school systems?
in the public school systems, yes.
And this is curriculum?
Yep. It is now part of the curriculum.
And what is the basis behind the curriculum? Do you know that?
I don't have that answer. I don't know what the basis is.
Because I could say a little bit about it. And that is that okay, we are all sexual beings. First of all, if two people did not have sex, save for the Mother Mary and whatever, but no, you know, two people have sex, they come together. That is where we come from. Certainly nothing wrong with sex. If it weren't for sex, we wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. Um, it has been seen and proven that children in the womb, one of the first things that we do is touch our genitals. We have, or this sucking reflex, which is a pleasure reflex. The thumb will be in the mouth. We've seen that in utero. And there's another, and that is that the hand will be on the genitals. And that's also a pleasure reflex. And those are the first two things, as far as our senses go, that are being developed in utero. So, knowing this science, I feel very strongly, along with a lot of other people, that it's very important that we do not shame human beings for being human. So, like, we have to let everyone know that that's where you come from. There are places, our entire bodies are erogenous, but there are other zones that are more pleasurable. The mouth, we're sucking from the, you know, from the time that we can, and then it's a source of food, and then you put something in there, and then later it goes from a pacifier, or how do you call it, a thing that they suck on, to
Pacifiers, yep.
then there's straws, and then we're sucking on straws, or we find out that, oh, it's really nice to suck on a finger. I'm getting to what you're talking about because I want to illustrate the very humanness. I don't like the word normal, but it's very much in our humanness to find pleasure in our mouths. And I think that's also really one of the reasons why people smoke. You'll see that people are always constantly sticking things in their mouths. So the first thing is that we need to not shame children if they're, you know, here I know that when we're potty training our children, we let them run around naked and just have a sort of a pot ready to go underneath their bottoms when they need to do it. And you will see then when children are let, to be walking around freely in their naked bodies, that they may touch themselves. So the first thing is don't shame them, because again, that's that message.
Okay, you cut out there.
That we get between 0 and 7. Again, in the age between 0 and 7, when a child is getting shamed for their body, they're going to grow up with body image issues. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You hear me?
Yeah, you cut out there towards the end.
Um, so what they're teaching, I would really, like, I didn't know this and I would really need to know a little bit more. But you asked, I think it was more of a moral question, what you're asking.
Yeah, like there's a moral debate behind this that they shouldn't be learning how to give a blowjob at 4 years old. They should be more interested in learning about like history or learning their ABCs and one, two, threes and how to do simple addition and subtraction rather than, you know, that stuff. That stuff,
Uh, is it, are
sorry.
they really teaching children how to give a blowjob?
Well, not at like junior kindergarten or grade one, grade two. I think it might be in like grade three or something. They're teaching them how like sexual acts. I'm like, really? I don't
This,
know. I don't know. I don't have kids myself, so I can't
mm,
really say what the actual curriculum is. But that's my view on it.
well, what I would like to say, make very clear, is the issue around shame. No, I don't agree with them teaching things that don't need to be taught at this particular phase of development. What I do agree with is the idea of not shaming a human body, human genitalia, or human pleasure. And I also, I don't think that children need to be pushed into seeing, um, yeah, do I say this? Do I know? Like, same sex. I think that if they grow up in that environment, that it's perfectly okay. But I think if they're coming to school and they're being encouraged, I don't think anyone needs to be encouraged at a young age. I think that they need to not be shamed for the moment that they come out, even if it's at 8 years old and they say, Mommy, I never want to wear a dress ever again because I'm not a girl, or whatever they say. It could be, and I'm no expert on children. What I very strongly about, though, is that humans need to be looked at on an individual basis. And this sheep mentality that everybody is the same or everybody is different and there's all these little boxes, I think that that is where a lot of low comes from, because you don't know who you are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially at 5 and 6, you don't know who you are. I know people in their 40s, they still don't know who they are.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, that is, I think, a whole nother episode, sex
Yeah,
education in
yeah, that
general, from
that's just another can of
what
worms.
age,
It's a
and
big can of worms there.
yeah, it is. It is.
So switching gears a little bit, once again, what is Tantra?
Go. The $1 million question. So Tantra is going to be a little bit different for every person, every tantrika, every tantra teacher, every tantra explorer that you speak to. But for me, it is an ancient wisdom tradition. It is the forerunner of what we call yoga. It was the original yoga, yoga meaning union, and tantra, the word being broken down, means to weave. So for me personally, what I've gotten out of tantra the most is that it is many, many teachings on transcendence, basically. And transcendence in the way not to get out of our bodies completely, but transcendence in the way that we can meet who we truly are, which is in essence that God energy. It's where we come from. We can be connected to that. We are connected to that before we come into these, earthly bodies. And Tantra is many of the teachings are about expansion, expanding to transcend this, kind of sometimes very mediocre existence into one that is ecstatic and very blissful. And you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to be anyone else. You don't have to, relocate. You don't necessarily have to be on the beaches of Bali to do this. But so for me, it is expansion and the inclusion in all of my personal interactions with different spiritual modalities and religions. One thing that why they never worked for me is because they were about like, this is okay and this is not. And like, if you want to be really, really good, then you got to make sure you don't do all these things. And that just never made sense to me. And Tantra is an all-inclusive way of being in life. And I personally believe that, coming from a place of non-judgment, we can actually create our own heavens on earth, and why do we need to die and suffer so much here in this earthly plane to get something in the afterlife? I want it now because, I know that I'm an infinite being and that in the universe there is absolutely no suffering, but there's nothing that makes sense to me that I need to suffer now in order to get something once I'm actually dead. So I feel like I've come here to create more and more expansion. And that is why Tantra for me is such an amazing practice and modality. And what I guess the big thing that most people would say, what does it include that other spiritual practices or religions don't include? And that is that aspect of the sexuality. Tantra even says is you can use sexual energy, you can use sexuality to get into these transcendent states. And that's why people like tantric sex.
So what, sorry, I'm going to pronounce this wrong again. So forgive me. What is Tantrika?
Tantrika. A tantrika. It's like a yogini. A yogini is a female yoga practitioner, and a tantrika is is someone who practices tantra, a female.
Oh, okay.
It's
And
like a
the male version
goddess.
would be, is there guys that are like practitioners in this, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Shiva. Anyone listening that is more experienced than me, they're going to know. Well, you have a dakini, which is also the embodiment of a tantrika, someone who practices tantra, and you also have a daka, and that is the male version. And these are ultimate space holders and people that are very experienced in working with these kinds of very powerful energies of sexuality,
Hmm.
amongst others. Yeah.
Cool. Isn't there a giant stigma on Tantra therapists as being sex workers?
Yeah, there could be. And that is, I came up with this in working with, like, okay, what is my why and what do I do? And like a stigma stomper. And I really like, I think it just all stigmas can be stomped out because, well, what is a stigma and what is its worth? And, what is it there for? Who is it for? That's the kind of questions I ask around stigmas, dogmas, taboos. Let's just talk about these things, find out what they mean, and what does someone really do. So, yes, there is. And I would say, certainly, if I look at my own transition and transformation, I've always been busy with sex and sexuality in one form or another. And you can either use it or it can use you, and it can be destructive, a destructive energy in your life, which it is for many people that are addicted to porn or that are addicted to sex or that are so addicted to love. And then they use sex to get that love um, or they can't even get connected enough to themselves to have sex with themselves or with someone else. So, it goes on and on. Having said that, I think that there is sex workers. And by that, yeah, by that meaning, I'm going to stomp the stigma. What is the added value of someone that can use their intellect, their mental and emotional capacities, along with their body and sacred, like this aligned holy energy, to help people, and also through or with, including of sexuality. Because when this sexual energy is pent up and repressed, we have big societal issues as well.
Hmm.
So that is me stomping the stigma of a sex worker. And yeah, I mean, in many regards, a Tantra therapist could be seen as a sex worker, but a sexuologist, or, anyone that's an expert in the field of sexuality is also a sex worker. Are they not?
Yep, I agree with that. Yep. Um, what do you mean by the healing power of
Yeah.
conscious sexuality?
The healing power of conscious sexuality. So, have you ever had a one night stand?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, good. All right. All right. I'm going to ask all the listeners, has anyone out there ever had a one night stand? And they're going, yes. Okay. Have you ever, after that one night stand, or even during, gone like, oh my God, what am I doing? Who am I with? And what is this for? Is there a fly in the room?
I no, no. I was actually thinking back to my past and I remember my
Oh,
ex-fiance.
I thought you're looking at a fly.
Like, oh
Um,
yeah. Yup. I remember
yeah.
that one.
Okay. So the healing power of conscious sexuality, when, and it could even be a one night stand, but when two people are very conscious of what's going on. So let's take alcohol and drugs out of the equation. You're very conscious, you're breathing, you're present with yourself, you're centered. So you're not having any anxiety about talking to anybody. You're feeling really good. You're feeling very centered. You're whole. You know you're coming from a whole place. And you can be with another person that is in that space as well. Then when you come together and you share your sexuality, however that wants to play out, And that can play out in many different scenarios or many different ways. You said the word acts earlier, but let's take the word acts out of it, because then you think of performances. So they are not sex acts, and it's not performing, but there are, um, you know, things that our bodies actually, when we get out of the way and we're very present and conscious, and we kind of get out of our heads and out of our way, the bodies know what to do. And your body will know what to do with my body would know what to do with yours. You know, when two people come together in this conscious space, and you get out of your heads, and everything is allowed to move as it wants to move, that can heal. Why does it heal? Because it can relieve shame. It can take away, that whole idea of performing, and that's already healing. So you're becoming a more whole person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually it does.
Yeah.
Actually it does.
Yeah. I
Um,
like, it's funny, like I hadn't really ever thought about this before, but we could actually have very healing conscious one night stands, when first, going back to the beginning of this conversation, when you've done your inner work and you're really coming from a place, I love myself and I want to share myself with another human being, and that human being wants to do that with you, that now what we would used to wake up and go like, oh my God, what have I done? Now you might wake up and say like, that was the most ecstatic, amazing experience of my life. Do we want to see each other tomorrow? Yeah, no, because I've got, it could be for so many reasons.
could that
But
could that potentially be dangerous because there's a lot of leeches out there?
when you say it, could that possibly, what do you mean?
Like we're talking about one night stands. So let's say you have a
Yeah,
one night stands. It was the best sex that you ever had in 10 years.
yeah, okay.
Could the because there's a lot of leeches out there that leech onto other people, and I like to call them
Vampires.
energy vampires. Yeah, and
Well,
couldn't that like potentially be very dangerous to like get to that point if you don't see a future with somebody with the other person?
I think this is an extremely interesting question. Um, we could really take some time for this, because it's like multifaceted. First of all, what I'm talking about is two people that are very centered, and if that's the case, then there could be, I think, very little potential for what you're talking about. On the other hand, there could be this person. um, yeah, I know what you're talking about, energy vampires. But then the question would be, are they conscious? you know Look, if somebody is an energy vampire and they're very conscious about it, and they're like, look, I need some energy and I want to sleep with you tonight, would you give me some of your energy? Then I would even say that that's still very conscious sexuality. And then you can come to a consensus. The other person can say, well, I've got so fucking much. I am like so overflowing. I've got plenty to give. Then even this whole idea, which I know it's been talked a lot about in the psychology, and there's so much being said about empaths and narcissists or energy vampire. The story can go on and on, but the word consciousness, awareness, these are words that changes the whole narrative.
Let's
And yeah,
I was gonna say there's a lot of people out there that are not conscious about themselves. There's a
so then
small
I would,
percentage that are aware of what they need.
I know, even when you say like, yeah, yeah. So that would be the first thing, is some people might not be aware of what they need, but most people are aware that they have a problem, or better yet, everyone's aware that someone else has a problem. And when that's the case, and I love this because when one finger is pointing that way, three are pointing back to you. So, as someone who's helping other people and coaching and working, or, um, it really helps when you're listening to someone say, like, but, there's really nothing wrong with me. And then they start talking about all the other stuff out there that's, you could listen and then see if there's some of what they're saying about that is maybe something that they're dealing with internally. Um, how many people are conscious? Well, that's exactly why you and I and thousands, if not millions, of others are stepping up and opening our mouths, sharing our messages, stepping up to the plate, taking the risk to uh, put ourselves out there and talk about these things online and to a broader audience. People don't necessarily need to know what they need. I feel that it's really important that people realize that it starts with becoming aware and becoming conscious of things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this is what Tantra does. It is one way before even getting to the sexuality, it's all about like if you go to a Tantra workshop, one of the first things that you'll do is start to connect to yourself. You'll go into meditation. You'll be invited to, dance like no one's looking. Well, yeah, that's for like a lot of people really, really hard because they don't even allow themselves to move. So it's all about getting to know yourself. And from that space, being able to connect more consciously with other people. And then, like, if you know that you're an energy vampire, you can very boldly own it and say, I'm an energy vampire and I'm looking for some energy tonight. Who's out there? Who's got more than me? Yeah, that changes the game right there. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
Um, you also referred to yourself as a black sheep. Now, this is personal for me as well, because when I was in high school, I also considered myself as a black sheep. What made you come to that whole decision that you were the black sheep?
What made me come to that? Well, it wasn't a decision. I don't think being the black sheep is a decision or a choice. I think it's a realization.
Okay, what was
You
the
know,
realization when you said, you know what, I am this black sheep?
um, that nothing in my immediate environment seemed to have anything to do with anything that was going on inside of me. Like everything that I ever wanted to do or express um, was ridiculed, basically. I mean, I think at a young age, I knew that I wanted to, so, be a voice, whether that be singing or dancing, movement on stage, acting, and all of these things were told to me that was just ridiculous. I mean, people like us don't think like that, but I did, you know. And in the same breath, I realized that even after 5 decades, that all the stuff, a lot of the stuff that was put into my head before the age of 7 is still very much directing my life. And every single day is a, a practice. I don't want to say it's like an effort, although maybe I could put a little bit more effort into it, but it's like constantly going, okay, everything that I know, let's go back to like focus. And the old programming is constantly running and I have to refocus every day.
And you've
Mm.
also said that this could be lonely. Okay, all these questions I personally know because
Mm-hmm.
I've I am that.
Yeah.
So, how do you see it? Why do you think that it's lonely?
Mm. Mm. Well, anyone that doesn't like kind of, I don't want to say go with the flow, but anyone that stands out who's different, they also say it's lonely at the top. I don't know if it's lonely at the top or if it's just lonely when you're black sheep, like forget that word. But when you're just like so different, and I guess that many people that reach the top, they don't reach the top because they're mainstream and they're just like everyone else. No, they reach the top probably because they're really very different than other people. So that's what I mean to say by I think it's just kind of lonely when you're different from the environment or culture that you find yourself in. And nowadays I see a huge upsurge of what they're calling tribes. It's like everyone's out there, you know if you can't find your own tribe, then you need to make your own tribe, because there are other people like you. However, back in the day, even now though, um, my daughter said the other day, okay, yeah, she said, yeah, I see that you're connected to a lot of people online and you're doing a lot of calls, but do you have any friends that are like in the immediate vicinity? And I don't really. And she asked me, isn't it lonely? And I was like, yeah, sometimes, yeah. That doesn't mean that I don't speak with like-minded people, and that I am now in a place in my deeply contemplating what to do with everything that I've learned. And um, yeah, that there is a very powerful and deep quality in being different, or being the black sheep. Necessarily lonely as it is alone, and that's a big one that needs to be addressed. Like, yeah, I can
Mm-hmm.
be alone and I cannot feel lonely. I can be alone and I can feel lonely. I can be in a great big huge crowd of people and feel very lonely. They're not, the same kind of vibe as me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Do you think we should break through this label, or should we wear it as a quote unquote badge of honor?
Ha. Well, seeing how that I'm not really one for labels anyway. And it's funny because, well, as soon as you said black sheep and that I had written that, I was like, oh, so I put Alex, and I get that because it's like somehow we do, like badge of honor is the way you put it. Sometimes somehow we do kind of want to have some sort of credibility. Well, I know what it's like to be the black sheep, so if there's any other ones out there, then we can vibe together. Um, Another label that's used a lot is better, actually. Um, And the black sheep is also like, of course, when you look at a herd of sheep, they're definitely um, colors, and there's always this one that's a little bit darker, and there's usually just one or two of them. But I certainly maybe we don't need labels that have anything to do with colors whatsoever. And um, there's, I think, a lot of people in the world that are misfits, and they can be the best entrepreneurs as well, and pretty much help a lot of people that feel the same way.
Well, talking about misfits and top entrepreneurs, I mean, look at Mr. Elon Musk. He does not
Is
look like he can
he a
fit into
misfit?
any party.
to any to
Um,
anybody? He gets invited to a lot of them, doesn't he?
yeah. We're going to be wrapping it up in a bit, but I always have these questions that I ask all my guests, and I just want your point of view on some of these. With the increase in people suffering from depression from the lockdown, what would be the one thing that you could tell them to keep their hopes up?
This too shall pass.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what I got.
And you're not the
Do
first
you
one
want
that said.
more?
No, that's the first. If you want to put more, you can put more. Internet, your internet.
This too shall pass is also like past the pause. Um, we're in a pause, and very often a pause is a great thing because you can contemplate and you can reflect and you can take some time out. And yeah, this too will pass, and then we will get past it. And that's the same with you know, I know depression is something not to be taken lightly, and I dare to say that it's also something that you can always we always have the ability to choose for something just a little bit better, even in a place of feeling depressed or depression. I'm not talking about clinical depression or something that's just kind of like that mood of being depressed, you know. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we can choose not to be depressed. We can choose to be angry or you know, something else.
That's good. Where do you see Past the Pause podcast and Dark Blossom in the next 5 years?
Mm. Ooh. Well, but in the next 5 years, the brand will definitely be established. I would like that Past the Pause has evolved to include many more topics, really moving into an evergreen area. And I would also see Dark Blossom going into retreats and merchandise products and online courses.
Cool. What about you personally?
Me personally, I'm just going to be very, very happy and like be living the life that I'm envisioning now. And that is one of abundance and prosperity, and that people are how expanded more in this vibration of embracing. And yeah, yeah, that's my personally. I'm now kind of going to the collective where I would like to see the world in 5 years. But just at peace. I like this one. Where I see myself now, and even more so in the future, is to be responsible, to be in a place of having the ability to respond to whatever circumstances life has going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that for everybody, that every person can have the ability to respond
Nice.
in whatever space that they're in.
Nice.
Yeah.
If you could pick up the phone right now and call yourself at 20 years old, what would you tell yourself?
I would say, you are fucking amazing. You've got this. Take it easy. Enjoy. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Do whatever it is that your heart desires. And there's nothing stopping you. You're unstoppable. You've got this. Go for it.
Awesome. Looking back, would you change anything?
No.
Love that answer.
No, I mean, it's not worth my energy to even say anything about it. Like, really. The reason why the answer is no is because I've spent a lot of time, and time is, at least in this particular plane, in this physicalness, it's kind of finite. And I've already spent a lot of time thinking about what if I coulda, woulda, shoulda. So no, no
That's
regrets.
awesome. Yeah, that's a great answer. Every time
Mhm.
somebody answers like that, it always puts a smile on my face because
I
I'm like, they got it. They got
I
it.
see. Yeah, I see it. It's great.
What keeps you up at night?
Nothing. I sleep really well. I love sleep. It's probably what I do most of anything at all. It's probably, I think, my biggest secret right now. How do I deal with being alone? I sleep. How do I deal with the crisis? I sleep. Um, yeah, well, I love, like, I really love it. Um, what I love is that I go to bed, I fall asleep, and I wake up almost exactly the same time every single day.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
Where can people find more about you?
So they can find me on Instagram at Meet Dark Blossom and Facebook at Meet Dark Blossom. They can check me out on Pass the Pause podcast. And those links will be in your show notes, I believe.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, if you
Yeah,
guys need
right.
to find more about Blossom and Dark Blossom and Past the Pause podcast, everything's going to be in the show notes on this underneath this podcast. Any final thoughts?
Hmm. Yeah, like take it easy. I think really take it easy. Take it easy with yourself. Um, what we've got, everyone can be completely in agreement, I believe, that we have an abundance, thank God, at this point, of air, and we can breathe, and we can always breathe, and we have complete, total control of our breath, and that is life. And my very final thought is this: I would rather die living than live dying.
That is wow. That's great. I love that. I'm going to
Okay,
take
that's
that.
good. No, that's my quote. It really, I remember the day that like got downloaded. I was like, oh my God. Like, and then I am where I am now, which is my whole thing is about ageless living. And I could, whatever it is, if I have the chance to jump out of a plane tomorrow and I could die, great, I'll do it. But I would rather do that than just sit around and have my body decaying while I'm still kind of sort of alive. That just, to me,
Mhm.
seems very insane.
Well, Blossom, thank you again for agreeing to come on the show. I appreciate you like clearing up a lot of the fog that's going on with everything. And now that I get a better understanding of what Tantra is, it seems even more interesting to myself. And I'm sure, like most people out there listening, has you've also cleared up a lot of stigmas and
Mm,
dogmas surrounding that. And
beautiful.
it's always good to like have an adult discussion about something as that we have perceived as a sensitive topic as sex, because it's so important to us as a
Right.
species, as people as well. So I appreciate you for having the courage to come on and talk to me and talk to the guests out there without any reservations. I appreciate you for that.
Thank you. I would just like to mention that I do one-on-one coaching and I do it online. So if any of your listeners are interested, they just need to reach out with a DM. in one of the social media
Okay,
channels.
perfect. Like I said before, we'll put all your links down here so
Yeah.
people have an easy access for you to get to you personally.
Yeah. Great.
Going through hard times is just a test. What you need to know is that when you get out of whatever you're going through, you will be stronger than ever before, and you don't need to go through it alone. Always know that you are not alone. Stay tuned for more real people with amazing stories that are just like yours. Until then, to everyone listening, I wish a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good night wherever you may be in this crazy world.